Hi Sneha. Good morning.
Hi, Pallavi.
Hi,
Uh,
hi.
how are you doing?
I'm doing okay. How are you?
I'm doing okay too. Can I ask you to switch on your camera so that we do the uh, video check as well?
So I'd like to keep my video on. That's okay with you?
Okay, yeah, no problem, no
Yeah,
problem. Yeah.
okay, thanks. So I'll just be logging in. I'm right now logged in with my phone. Like another minute or so, I'll just log in with on my laptop. Actually, my Wi-Fi isn't working, so I logged in from my phone.
Yeah, no problem. Yeah.
Yeah, okay,
Okay,
okay. Thanks, Sneha.
no problem.
Sneha, should I start to include the participant as well?
What? Can you
Uh,
come again?
should I start to include the participant, those who are in waiting room?
Uh, okay, yeah, start inviting them. We should be starting in another 2 minutes. So I'll let you know by just saying we are going to be recording and then we'll start. Um, we'll start now. So Good morning, everybody. Good morning, everyone. Today is day 5 of PanACEa 2021, a conference on asexuality in Asia. So the panel today is going to be Laws and Languages, Ace Activism in Asia, and it is about recognizing the legal battles of the queer community and ace community faced by us, or we are currently facing in different Asian countries, and the importance of vernacular languages used to reach the local ace community to raise awareness and strengthen the ace movements and ace activism. So right now, we have a panel of people from different countries. So we have with us Daniel Yoling and Sippy and Pallavi Sharma and myself, Sneha. So I would like to start with self-introductions. So Sippy, can I ask you to start?
Sure. I'm Sippy. I identify on the arrow spectrum as gray ace, as a woman. I'm a part of Nepali Asexuals. We're a very sort of fledgling community that's only been around for a year. So we're sort of trying to find our feet within the larger queer community and within, like the ace identifying people in Nepal as well. Yeah. So I'm looking forward to a lively discussion here.
Thank you, Sippy. Daniel, you go next.
Everyone, my name is Daniel. My pronouns are he, they. I'm an independent scholar based in Taipei, and I'm also a part of the Taiwan Asexual group. And I'm currently the lead researcher for our Taiwan asexual community survey that we're conducting. We actually just launched it this week. And I'm also an editor at Blue Magazine, which is a bilingual transnational leftist publication here in Taiwan.
Thank you, Daniel, for that introduction. Pallavi, can I ask you to introduce yourself?
Hi, good morning, everyone. So my name is Pallavi. I'm basically a lawyer from India. I work primarily in women and child rights. I have done a lot of cases pertaining to child sexual abuse. And in terms of women rights, I have litigated a lot for victims of acid attack and, helped in their rehabilitation in the entire medical processes as well. My pronouns are she, her.
Thank you, Pallavi. Right now, I'm going to start from the beginning, the languages that we use, and then the community we build, and then we go into the legal framework. So, Sippy, I would like to direct this question to you because, as Asians, we have different languages, different cultures, different rich histories, and from west to east, we have different ethnicities. So, what were the languages that you used or Nepali asexuals had to find for asexuality as such, and to build the community and to create awareness within the community? So could you give us your experience and share your thoughts on that?
Right. It's been an interesting time, I think, this last year, because as as varied and as prolific as the languages that we use in our countries are, like especially in Nepal, we have quite a lot of regional dialects and regional languages. And even though Nepali is our official language, there were no words, that you could find in a dictionary if I wanted to look up asexuality in Nepali. And reports by commissions like the NHRC, or when they define asexuality, they define it as celibacy, or people who don't want to get married, or people who are only sexually repulsed. So to try to find like a cohesive sort of explanation or a word that described, like all the spectrums of asexuality, it was really sort of, it's non-existent and difficult. So in the last year, what some of the local youth groups and queer organizations have been doing is that they've been compiling a dictionary of sorts of words that are friendlier to use, or that they feel sort of encapsulates what, queer terms mean in local languages. So that's been an interesting process. So try to say that asexuality is not someone who's just sex repulsed, or it's not celibacy, and try to make sure that you keep saying that on all sort of queer forums and all sort of meetings that you have with other queer people who are also sort of in the unknown about these things, right? So that's been an interesting process, I think. And translating from English to Nepali and to other regional languages, which we haven't really been able to do because there's a lack of persons and resources to sort of have all these translations out into the world, right? But to even have that limited amount of, translated work or words in Nepali, which is now the official language here, even though there is movement to have other languages included as well. So it's been really, really challenging, because then you want to have words that are friendlier to use for the younger generations, but then it's also sort of where do you draw that line between what language is useful and easily accessed versus what language actually describes what it is, uses the language that you use, which sort of encapsulates everything within itself. So that's been a challenge, definitely. So at the end of the day, we've sort of come as a community to say, okay, asexuality means ayonikta in Nepal. And so that's been sort of a general consensus that the community itself has adopted. But outside of the community, it's still slow going, and it's, spread. Yeah.
Thank you, Sippy. I relate with you. The place I come from don't even have a word for asexuality, and the word that is there, it describes single-celled organisms, and I don't want to use it. So I really understand the importance of language to express our identity. Daniel, what has been the experience on the Taiwanese and Chinese side?
Yeah, I would say that as far as my involvements with the asexual community in Taiwan, I'll say there's a very kind of robust kind of culture of translation, where we do have specific Mandarin terminology for a lot of microidentities, a lot of different types of attraction, and the sort of and it's still growing, right? So when Taiwan Asexual Group gives presentations, kind of does ACE 101 type of kind of more public-facing talks, there's still a sense when we're sort of going through the nitty-gritty between what is physical and sensual attraction versus aesthetic attraction versus romantic attraction, that these terms are sort of still evolving. So I think that's one of the things that's kind of exciting about being in Taiwan right now in terms of asexual organizing, is that the community is still sort of figuring out okay, do these different distinctions that Anglophone asexual communities have made around various terminologies, one, do these translate well into Mandarin? And two, do these different categories actually reflect the experiences of asexuals in Taiwan? That's sort of an open question that, at least in my experience talking with other asexual community organizers and other community members, is sort of it's a very lively discussion and something that people are very willing to converse and think creatively about.
Lovely. That brings us hope. When there is translation, we literally translate from the English language to our native language. And both of your experiences with your languages, it gives us hope that, yeah, there is something that can be done with our own language itself. Ala has just joined us. Ala is from the West Asia. Ala, do you want to share us about your language, as in what kind of words do you use to express asexuality, and how do you use them in communicating to other ACE members, and building a network? If you could just jump in and offer your opinion.
Good morning for everyone. I'm sorry, I'm not ready for video. So
Oh, no problem, no problem. It's okay. You can be without the video as well.
Basically, we are using the Arabic language. I'm from Iraq. I'm sorry, I forgot to introduce myself. My name is Ada. I'm from Iraq. I work as a dental hygienist and an activist in some domestic organizations. So yes, we are translating the words from English to Arabic. Most of them, yes, we can, but many of terms and words are new, even in English, in LGBT plus community. Many of them we still can't use it in Arabic, so we are using it in English, but many of them, or most of them, we are translated to Arabic.
Okay. Thank you, Ala, for that. Moving on, I would like to delve deep into the challenges that we face as communities, as ACE groups. So, Daniel, what sort of challenges does the ACE communities in Taiwan face when it comes to ACE activism, ACE movements, and trying to spread the word and trying to build the community?
I think at this point, it's really a matter of raising awareness and also connecting Taiwan's asexual movement to broader LGBTQIA plus sort of efforts that are happening in Taiwan right now. So for instance, as I'm sure folks on the panel and people listening know, Taiwan legalized same-sex marriage in 2019, although that isn't full marriage equality because transnational same-sex marriages are still illegal. But so we've been in so Taiwan Asexual Group has had, for instance, TAP CPR. I'm forgetting the English name of. Let me just look it up. The Taiwan Alliance to Promote Civil Partnership Rights. We've had kind of friendly relationships with this organization. They've kind of asked Taiwan Asexual Group to share more about, how can different kinds of civil partnership reform efforts better include the experiences and kind of ideal or desired intimate partnership choices that various asexual community members might have. But it's really, so I would say there's sort of friendly relations between various LGBTQIA plus groups in Taiwan, but we're still sort of trying to find ways to kind of broaden the discourse and make more kind of tangible connections. Yes, that's sort of, I think for right now, the main kind of where we're at.
Thank you, Daniel, for that, because I know Taiwan has a rich history of queer movements, and I think the queer movement in Taiwan is it's a prolific movement, at least in the Asian context, because the movement to legalize marriages between same-sex couples was long drawn process, and there were a lot of legal battles involved. With Sippy, now coming to you, what kind of challenges do you face apart from the language? What other challenges do you face when it comes to building the community or reaching out to the community and building the awareness, and what sort of challenges do you face?
I think I've said this earlier, that like we are a very fledgling community in Nepal, right? Like as sort of an open, space that we've Nepali Asexuals has only been around for a year. And in that time, like, whoever people we've managed to reach and whoever's sort of joined us, that's been a very accepting sort of community. But in the larger sort of frame of, of queer movement in Nepal, which is always being sort of touted as like, Nepal is a queer friendly place and we have like all these progressive laws and all these progressive movements going on. I feel like there is so much to unpack within that statement, because like, in the space of like saying, oh, okay, like third gender was like something that was awarded, like you can have a passport that says third gender, but then there's so many other things that are being limited within that statement. So like, I feel like asexuality as a concept even is not something that a lot of people understand, right? Like, especially because other queer identities are something that are only just sort of beginning to be understood by the larger, larger community and by people in general, and sort of being accepted. So in a lot of ways, like a lot of our, I think this will play into like the laws when we talk about laws, is it's like, because it's not mentioned specifically in the law, you get away with a lot of things kind of thing. Yeah, and so in that sense, like I think building an ace community is just, it's just starting. Like we're just taking root and trying to get the word out there that, yes, this is what we are, and this is how we are, and this is the spectrum, or this is like, these are the words we identify with, or this is how we are queer, and this is how we belong to the queer community. I think that's going to take a while, and that's like all of those processes are going to have their own challenges. So I can't like it's because we're such a fledgling group. I don't think we've quite faced the the extent of the challenge that we will be facing, I think, in the coming years.
Ala, would you like to hop in and pitch your views? Like, what is the challenges that you face? Because Iraq is quite conservative when it comes to alternate sexuality. So what are the challenges that you face when you try to communicate about asexuality? What are the problems that you face?
Actually, it's a lot of problems. This is kind of taboo. The sex, talking about anything related to sex, it's a forbidden thing to talk about. Specifically, I'm a female, I should be shy, I shouldn't use such words, I shouldn't talk to public. That's the taboo of the society. So it's kind of how dare you to speak about sex? How dare you to do such a thing? How does how your family accept this? This is the first thing they said to me when I talk in public and make awareness. The second thing is that, oh, you are sick. You are maybe you are gays under cover. Maybe you are. That's a lot of accusation, and the one of the most important thing. It's specific for Iraq because we have militias, we have clans, we have a lot of things out of law. So for me, because I talked in public, I've got some message and comments. It's not only hatred, it's threatened. One of them, that he said that he would like to burn me alive whenever he sees me, just because I said I'm asexual. That's all. So we have many challenges. One of the most important, one of the hardest challenge is the laws. We don't criminalize the marital rape. The female can't experience any sexual experiment before marriage, so she can't discovering herself well. There is no sex education in schools. When she gets married, she might just surprised, oh, I don't feel anything, why? And then they told her, maybe he told her, you don't love me, or something else, or you are sick, or you need to go to doctor. A lot of things. And the ignorant families might go to some, we call them just like a magic man, or do some spells, or do something, or make her drink something, or have you ever heard about those type of people, the ignorant one, people who are,
Yeah, I have. Yeah.
instead of going to doctor, they are going to some liar one who take their money and give them just the descriptions um, from plants and stupid things, or read some religion, some words from Quran or something else. So that's one of the challenges, and many. I can't remember it all right now, but it's many challenges actually here. Every single person has his own challenge. It depends on the family, depends on the community, depends on his nationality and religion.
True. I'm truly sorry that this is happening to you, Ala, the death threats and the hate comments. We are behind you, all support from
Thank
the ace
you.
community all over the world. We are
Thank
with you. Pallavi, since we touched upon laws and we touched upon marital sexual assault, could you give us what is happening in India, how the situation is with regard to marital sexual assault, and how it, like, yeah, I do get that queer community, in particular ace community, they are forced into marriages, and marital sexual assault is a real thing, even within the non-queer community, and it's even more of an issue. It's a graver issue when it comes to the queer community as well. So could you just give us your opinion on that, um, and how is the situation in India?
And the underage marriage is a huge problem we have.
Okay.
So you can't force or make a teenager to get married and deal with this contract and the new family and having babies and all getting fast, and then they get divorced. A high level of divorce in this last years because of this problem. They are married underage, and we have this concept of forcing the family. Your father can force you to get married. Your uncle, your oldest brother can force you to get married underage. And the other concept that you should get married. Like now I'm 30. Oh, wow, you're 30? Why you didn't get married till this time? What's wrong? That's just a pressure on asexuals. And if a man said, I'm an asexual, you are not a man. That's the first, you are not a man, and he might be, I can't explain it in English. They think that he's sick and they do not respect him anymore. Oh, you're sick, you're not man, you can't have sex. That's how they think. So we are making a progress actually in this few years. Me and my friend from Algeria made the first page, made the on social media. We are trying to post, and then we wrote a book. It's a first book in Arabic. We are making a progress. Many people took the book, many people reading our post, and even on the Clubhouse, we made many talks and conversations, and we are trying to make awareness as much as we could. And I have seen a little bit of a light in the end of this tunnel, and we can make a difference in the few years that will come. Maybe in the future we can do something for the next generations of the asexuals. I'm always saying, if the asexuals before us, they knew themselves and they talked and they said, we don't have an attraction, we are not just celibate, maybe the word celibacy. Yes, celibacy. If they said that before, if they made awareness, the generation before us, we are not now struggling this and trying to make awareness. So we're making awareness for the new generation that will come. I'm sorry, my English not too good.
It's okay, Ala. It's okay, no problem. English is just a tool of communication. It's not something.
Yes, I hope that you get the idea.
Yeah, definitely. We do. Don't worry about it. Thank you, Ala, for that hope at the end of the tunnel and the light at the end of the tunnel.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Because it is very important, even though we struggle a lot, we see how your struggle is also giving fruits, right? So it's very heartening to know that, and go at it, go for it, keep at it.
Thank you.
Pallavi, if you would like to hop in and offer your opinion on the laws regarding marital sexual assault in India, because Ala had mentioned about it, and I think it's a nice segue to lead us into the legal framework and policies segment.
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Sneha. So yeah, I was listening to Ala. Ala, more strength and power your way from all of us, I think. Yeah, so Sneha, I think in India, just a brief background of how the legal framework in India has been in terms of the LGBTQI plus community and the queer community, right? There was I think 2-decade long struggle that we saw the queer community in India take up, right? There was a 200-year-old draconian law that was still in existence. Very recently in 2018, right, after a 2-decade-long legal battle that was fought, the section that criminalized homosexuality was struck down. I think it was in September 2018, if I'm not wrong. And yeah, I think it was a huge stepping stone and great beginning for the queer community in India. Beginning being the key word here. Why? Because I think the people, though there was a lot of celebration around it, we saw a lot of laudatory coverage from the media as well, which was a good thing, right? Because usually in India, you'll see the media being very restrictive in terms of issues that are considered, socially quote unquote taboo, right? But this judgment was celebrated even despite that, even by the Indian media. The people from the community themselves saw this as a beginning. Why? Because there's a huge way for the community to go in terms of laws and gaining that equal status when it comes to India specifically as a country, right? You do not have marriage that can be legalized in India. So gay marriages in India are not legalized, right? Same-sex marriages in India are not legalized. There are no adoption rights. So which is something that is very discriminatory in itself, right? So there is a huge way to go in terms of that, right? Gaining equality in terms of marriage laws, adoption laws, and all of that. When it comes to violence specifically, I think there is domestic violence that we can talk of. In fact, TIS in India, the Tata Institute of Social Sciences, has done a great study on, domestic violence faced by homosexuals in India, right? And I think it is one study. I'll send it to you, Sneha. I'll send the link to you, and you can share it with other people also, because it's a great study, I think. And unfortunately, there are very few studies done in India when it comes to the queer community, right? So you'll either find these social institutes or few NGOs that do, studies and reviews of the community, nothing that the government does, because in India, their identity, unfortunately, is not recognized, right? You cannot, like, even in terms of quote unquote, the whole conversion therapy was legalized until very recently, I think last month, if I'm not wrong. The High Court, the Madras High Court, actually called it illegal and, said it should be banned. So when you have, such things that go in parlance being legalized, right? So the whole striking down of 377 does not hold much ground then. So yeah, in terms of domestic violence, coming back to that, so there was the study done by TIS that spoke about how the people from the queer community face a lot of domestic violence, right? How their parents or their guardians force them into conversion, quote unquote, conversion therapies. And then after going through this domestic violence, how it becomes all the more difficult for them to even report it, right? Because there are a lot of people who do not want to come out with their sexuality or come out with their identities. So even reporting it becomes a lot of obstacle for them, right? Going and seeking um, uh, physical or mental help also, in terms of counselings, and to overcome that trauma of violence that they have faced, also becomes very difficult, because then these people, the people from the community, are not willing to come out, right? Their families are not willing to support them. So there's a lot of pressure and a lot of violence that people from the community in India are facing, and it's all the more difficult because of the social stigmas that are attached. It is all the more difficult because of the if I may call it, the half-hearted legal backing that you see for the community in India. So I think the challenges are very, very tough there. We had the whole transgender persons bill being passed in 2019, right? That itself is being challenged in the Supreme Court right now. The bill itself is very discriminatory, again, in terms of violence and laws, right? So it recommends 2-year punishment for sexual assault against anyone from the queer community, whereas for the same crime, for a cishet woman, you'll see the punishment is 7 years, even leading to life imprisonment, right? And in rare cases, even death. Then why for the people of queer community, it's limited only to 2 years, right? So yeah, in terms of violence that's being faced, whether it's sexual violence or the mental violence that the people from queer community in India face, I think even the laws and the social taboos are a huge restraint, even when it comes to seeking remedies, right? Yeah.
That we do have a long battle to go, because we just seem to have started the beginning, as you rightly mentioned, Pallavi. Moving on, Daniel, can you just give us an overview of the laws that are favoring? I mean, we had discussion on laws that are actually should be protecting but doesn't protect. But in Taiwan, what are the laws that are favorable to the ace community and the queer community in general, apart from the marriage equality law?
Yes, I'll be a bit optimistic in my response, but the sort of reality of the current legal situation is that besides same-sex marriages between Taiwanese citizens or with other citizens in other countries where same-sex marriage is already legalized, in terms of other kinds of legal protections or kind of categories or recognition around various kinds of queer kinship or intimate kind of relationships, it's not the effort to push for those reforms is there, but in terms of like what's actually on paper right now, it's not. It's like not the best. So, for instance, around adoption law, same-sex couples can adopt the other party's child if there is some sort of biological blood relation. So that's a limitation in terms of adoption rights for same-sex couples. In terms of assisted reproduction, currently that is specifically limited to heterosexual marriages where one of the partners is, I'm forgetting the exact wording or the exact requirement, but deemed infertile or has some sort of fertility issue. So very, very, very narrow kind of legal opening in terms of who can access various forms of assisted reproduction. Surrogacy isn't a thing in Taiwan. What other things are there? Yeah, so I would say there's still a lot of legal barriers where that are hindering sort of the queer community more broadly, but then also specifically the ace community in terms of like, well, what if ace people don't want to get married? Right? Even I'm not I acknowledge that there are various ace couples that are involved in platonic marriages and whatnot, but I think that I guess we'll see based on the survey results, but my current kind of guess is in terms of the ace community here in Taiwan, there is a need for sort of broader legal protections around intimate partner or intimate kinship configurations that aren't completely focused on monogamous marriage. And I know that there are other, like that sentiment isn't something that only ace people in Taiwan sort of feel. There are plenty of other groups that also are critical of same-sex marriage and sort of the limitations of state protections only around one particular kind of relationship configuration. And there are also organizations such as the Taiwan Alliance to Promote Civil Partnership Rights that I mentioned previously, who were the sort of the NGO that sort of dealt with the same-sex marriage kind of case. They in previous efforts that they've made, they like also acknowledge that like not everybody is trying to get married, and therefore there needs to be a more robust sort of set of legal reforms that can accommodate a broader range of relationships. So I would say, yeah, the atmosphere is encouraging in terms of like in terms of different groups acknowledging the need for broader legal reforms around adoption rights, around assisted reproduction, around different kinds of legal categories beyond marriage. So that's sort of where some of my optimism comes from. But as of today, October 2021, in terms of the laws that are currently in place, there's still a long way to go.
Actually, I sort of can see how the queer movement in Taiwan, which has led to the legalization of same-sex marriages, has now opened up at least the sort of discussion around people who do not want to get married. What about the relationships? What about those contracts? Are they like, there is at least some sort of conversation that's happening, and it's going in the right direction. As you said, it is encouraging, and we'll see how it goes. And definitely we'll be looking at Taiwan for how it goes and how it is happening there. Sippy, do you want to jump in and pitch in your opinion here about the laws in your country?
So, I mean, I think 2007, the court ruling legalized homosexuality in Nepal, right? Like, I mean, they decriminalized it. And then there were also talks about legalizing same-sex marriage. And then the new constitution that was written in 2015 was supposed to have those in place, but that didn't actually happen. I mean, there are provisions for, like it does say, like the constitution does include does use words like sexual and gender minorities and have provisions for like, anti-discrimination against these people and things like that. But how much of that is actually enforced in the local level is another story. And that differs from place to place, right? There is provision for people identifying as third gender to say they're third gender, but then there's no provision for, say, like if I'm a male to female transitioner, like if I want to identify myself as a female, then there's no provision for that. In terms of marriage and adoption laws, like the adoption laws, I found very interesting because I was reading up on this morning because I didn't actually have an idea of what the adoption laws were in Nepal were. But it does say like couple with no child after 10 years of marriage, then it doesn't define what a couple is, which I found very interesting. Or unmarried woman of 45, widow, divorced, separated, or unmarried man of 45, widow, divorced, or separated, are allowed to adopt a child. But then it doesn't specify of anything about sexuality or gender, So I think that's what I was saying earlier, is that you can get away with a lot of things because it's not mentioned explicitly in the law. I do know that in 2015, there was a ban on surrogacy like it's only legal for infertile Nepali couples now. Like if you're a foreigner or if you're and married couples, and then marriage is defined as between a man and a woman, of course. So you're not allowed to have. So surrogacy is otherwise illegal. In terms of domestic violence, it's interesting because domestic violence is defined as, like physical, mental, like all of those things are included. And then it does say people living in a family together, or domestic help living in the family together. So there's again like no sort of like clear definition of, is it only between a man and a woman, or all members of the family. So there is that, and I think some of the court rulings have used this sort of like ambiguous language in a positive kind of way as well. There was an interesting sort of ruling in 2012 where a lesbian couple was allowed to live together. Like one of them was allowed to leave her married husband and live with her partner, and the court ruled that, like that definition of marriage in the Constitution is sort of ambiguous, so we can use this for this to be allowed. So in terms of sort of like, anti-discriminatory practices and laws, there is give in the language, right? Because it says, like, and other considerations or any other such considerations. So people can, like, I think rulings have used that sort of ambiguity, for their purpose. But in practice, like how much of that actually translates is again, like, it's a very gray area. Like, I think an activist that I know who wanted to have to identify as a female on her records actually sent out a petition to like every district in the country and got replies back from like 98% of them saying that, yes, there is this law, but we don't actually enforce it. So, that's where we are at, I think.
Thank you, Sippy. Pallavi, since we mentioned about marriage laws and we mentioned about adoption laws and we mentioned about surrogacy and also assistive reproductive techniques, what is the legal language like, or legal framework in India, at least, about surrogacy and assistive reproductive technologies? And is it pro-queer? How do you think it is going to be like? Or I know for a fact that there has been some changes in the law in the last few years, making it tougher. So do you think that has some kind of challenges for the queer community as well? Or what is your point of view on this?
Yeah. So Sneha, I think this is a great question. In India, unfortunately, as of now, what the situation is, right? So if you even read about the activists or people from the community write about the rights and the challenges that they face in India, one thing that's common to all the voices that are raised pro the community is that, they seem to have this feeling that, the judiciary and the legislature in India seem to be at loggerheads, right? When it comes to, being a voice for the people from the community, right? So whereas you'll have the judiciary, strike down 377 and, talk about equality, and, even the whole judgment, was very emotionally also penned down, where, the judges wrote that, the entire country owes an apology to the community because they've been suppressed and denied their rights and all of that. On the other hand, you'll have the legislature acting very insensitively, right, when it comes to framing laws and actually implementing the judicial verdict on the ground. Like I was talking about the transgender persons bill that came about in 2019, right? It came up, the government brought that bill without even consulting any of the stakeholders, right? Without talking to people from the community or any of the activists, right? So the bill in itself was very, very problematic, right? Like it snatched away the basic right from the people to determine their sexual orientation, right? So if they had to actually, get a proof of their sex, determination from the district magistrate. That is what the bill says. So the bill, when becomes an act, to actually say if you want to identify yourself as a male in India, right, you'll have to actually get a certificate from a district magistrate, which is hilarious, right? It takes away, it snatches away your basic right of self-determination, right? So district magistrate will have to certify and tell you whether you can be, you are able to, or whether you can identify yourself as male or not, right? The other discriminatory aspect was, of course, the whole sexual abuse point that I spoke about. For cishet women, the punishment would go to 7 years or life imprisonment. But whereas, sexual abuse against trans people or people from the community will be limited only to 2 years of punishment, right? Then there were various other aspects, right, that were very, very discriminatory, right? So though it spoke about, inclusiveness in terms of education and opportunities for the people from the LGBTQI plus community, the trans community, it did not lay any guidelines and any plan how it's going to achieve that, right? So you can talk about there is no reservation for the community, even in the government sector as of now, right? Let alone the private sector, which continues to discriminate, by having impunity, right? Because there are no guidelines, no laws, no checks on the private sector. So they can discriminate with impunity, right? But even for the government sector, there's no reservation in terms for the LGBTQI plus community, right? As far as marriage, surrogacy, adoption go, there are no laws that allow the people from the LGBTQI plus community to actually, foretake all of these civil rights. So in terms of civil rights, there is zero work, there is zero legal sanction in India, right? There are no civil laws pertaining to the LGBTQI plus community in India. Surrogacy is illegal, adoption's illegal, same-sex marriages haven't been legalized as of now. So yeah, on ground, no civil rights for the LGBTQI plus community. There was a lot of, activism in terms of making marriage laws inclusive of the LGBT plus community, right? They wanted a separate law to be drafted, and they were hoping that the trans persons bill that would come up would do that. But unfortunately, even it failed to recognize the civil rights for the LGBT plus community in India, right? So yeah, as of now, there are no laws for surrogacy or adoption or marriage. Yeah.
There is actually, thank you, Pallavi, for that wonderful summary of the entire legal system that plays such, it's a off miss and hit chance, in my opinion. it says, okay, we can do this, and then the legal legislature will say, no, not happening. So I see that a lot. And there is one question that is quite interesting for our session here. Do any of our countries have laws requiring sex to consummate a marriage? So Pallavi, do you want to take this up?
Oh yeah, Sneha. Yeah. In India, right? I mean, in fact, this is consummation of marriages, like considered a ground for divorce as well, right? So if your marriage isn't consummated, it could be one of the grounds you could go and seek divorce. And for a marriage, because the marriage would not be considered a marriage if it has not been consummated, right? So it does go on then to further be a ground for divorce. The courts recognize it as a ground of divorce. Like if your marriage is not consummated, the courts assume that, it's not a marriage. So it's easier for you to get a divorce, and it can be a ground for divorce. So yeah. In India, there is a law requiring sex to consummate a marriage. A marriage is considered to be quote unquote consummate only when you have had sexual intercourse with your husband or your wife. Yeah. So these are all like very draconian laws, Neha, like in the whole 377, right, that criminalized homosexuality in India was like a 200-year-old law. And imagine for it to be scrapped after like 20 years of the petition being filed. After 20 years, the court decided, oh, we have a petition that's pending, and, let's strike down 377. And then, transfer the entire burden to the legislature. Now we have decriminalized it. Now you have to go ahead and make laws around it, give civil rights, give civil sanction to all of it. And then the legislature comes up with the transgender persons bill, which is completely silent when it comes to civil rights. And it doesn't actually try to decode what the court's judgment is, and build laws around it and try to cover more ground. It has been very, very, everything is like very restrictive and limited in its scope. If I may say, it's like playing safe, because the society in India is not very very acceptable to the LGBT plus community, right? They aren't very acceptive of the community. It is still considered a taboo, right? So you play very safe. The legislature plays it safe. The judiciary plays it safe, because you don't want to be in cahoots. You don't want to be at loggerheads with the society at large or with the citizens of the country at large. So that is how I see it. That it's. And then ultimately, when the two lawmaking, when the legislature plays it safe and the judiciary plays it safe, where do the people go for recourse, relief, and to have their rights, right? So they're left with nothing else but then to again carry forward the ground activism that they do, right? So it took 20 years for them to just get the section struck down to decriminalize, right? I don't know how many more years it'll take for them to actually have equal civil rights, equal criminal rights in this country. I think it is at this point the duty of the legislature and judiciary to very, very proactively take it, and not just be limited in their exercise of powers when it comes to the LGBT plus community in India. Yeah.
Ala, I would like you to chip in here. I mean, does your country laws require sex to consummate marriage? Religious law or even country's law require sex to be like it's the requirement for marriage? Ala? Yes.
Yes, we have laws about marriage, but it depends on Islam. It depends on the religion of majority. We have a lot of problems with the laws. It's not only about the social life, it's even about the political life. There's a lot of mistakes in the laws. First, it's an old laws. It's when they made the first laws, it was maybe in the 60s, in the 16s, in the, sorry, the number, in the 16s, when they first made the Iraqi government. After it was kingdom, and then it becomes a republic. So it's very old laws. Like I said, we don't criminalize the rape if there is any legal paper that prove that he's your husband, so you can't complain anymore. As Palivi, maybe her name, as she said about the adoption laws, it's very complicated. It's very hard. So it's almost we don't have adoption. And about the marriage, it's only for heterosexual people. That's it. A man marry a woman. That's it. There's a lot of difference between the man and the woman in such laws. Even the criminals that they make when a man killing his wife, claiming that she was cheating on him, it's different if a woman make the same crime and she said he was cheating on me. It's different. There's no gender equality in this. And the age of the marriage, it's from 16 to female and 18 to male. This is the law. But what's happening in the society, we are naming it marriage out of the court. When someone force his daughter to marry, maybe she's 12 or even 11 or maybe less or maybe more, at a man of religion making the marriage. It's out of the court. And even if she has a babies, they not register in the governmental records. The new baby is registering to the grandfather and the grandmother in the legal records. So we have this problem. Many of laws we can't deal with it because we have the clan words against the law words. So the clan wins after all. And we have, maybe I didn't make it clear, the idea. First, we have some defects and a lot of things are not good in the laws. And the second, even if we have good things in the laws, the clans and the militia, they are having another words, and their word against the law word, no, they are win, not the law.
Oh, that is dire. So if a person in a marriage says my partner has not consummated, this marriage is not consummated, is not having sex, is that grounds for divorce then in your country?
Yes. Even if she is if the woman she didn't want to have sex, even her husband can beat her, can hit her and force her to sex. But if the opposite, if the man didn't have sex with his wife, she can go to the court and make a complaint, and she can get divorced after all. But here we have the community. Once I met such a case in the psychological department in a hospital. She has the same problem. Her husband, he didn't touch her from many years. when she said that she needs sex, the community blame her that you shouldn't ask for sex, you are a woman, it's shame on you, like such a things. They think that if only the man has this right to having sex, a woman can't. So many of women, it's, as I said, it depends on the family and the community, and we have many communities, we are not one community. So it depends on her family. If her family accepting that and they didn't see it's something is wrong, if she wants having sex with her husband, she can go to the court and get divorced. But if she came from a village maybe or countryside, they might say that you are impolite to ask for such a thing and you have to stay. And if you get divorced, the divorcing is just a stigma.
Thank you, Allah. Thank you for that opinion, like that thought and that.
Thank you.
Thank you. Sifi, what about in your country? Is sex a requirement for marriage? Is it grounds for divorce, or does the court consider it as, yes, this is, if a person is not consummating the marriage, then they can apply for divorce? Is it something like that? Is it similar, or is it different?
I am not entirely sure, actually. As far as I understand it, like the law defines marriage as between two consenting, a consenting man and a consenting woman, who are now, I think, the age has been increased to 20 years old. And as long as the relationship is not incestuous in any kind of definition that the law defines as incest, which is mostly between a man and a woman again, you know. And I know that there have been cases of divorce where the marriage has not been consummated. But I don't know, like, I'm unsure that there is actually like a law that exists. I'd have to look that up a little bit more in detail. Yeah. It's, I think, I mean, because marriage, and I also find it interesting that in the definition of marriage, I think it also says that they have to, like, the couple has to live together with dignity and with love for each other. And, you know, so like if you don't have love in a relationship, then that's not considered marriage. And how does the law sort of dictate that you have to love your spouse, which I found very strange. But yeah, that's in the language, that you have to have like respect for each other and love for each other, and that you have to like live harmoniously or in consent, right? So yeah, as far as I know, that's where that's at. But grounds for divorce these days, I think there have been cases where you know, consummation has been ground for divorce, I think. Yeah.
Thank you, Sifi, for that perspective. Daniel, what about in Taiwan, in your country? Is sex, consummation of marriage important, or is that like a ground for divorce? Is that something like that, or is it different, or how is it in Taiwan?
Yeah, I guess similar to Sipi, I'm less familiar on this particular aspect of marriage law in Taiwan, and I am also unfamiliar with hearing sort of cases where failure to consummate a marriage is used as an argument for grounds for divorce.
Okay. So because this is such an important topic, at least for the ace community, the ace couples, because for them, if they choose not to have sex, then is that marriage valid, right? In the eyes of the law, is that even, for instance, if it happens, then how is their marriage looked from the legal point of view? So it questions the entire basis of marriage then. So it's an interesting question, and the answers are very tough to give, because the concept of marriage itself is undefined in any country, as Pallavi put it rightly. And even it's very ambiguous, and it's very it's left to interpretation. And like for instance, the legal language is not explicit. It's always, there is always some kind of ambiguity included. And does that mean we can then use that ambiguity to support our cause? So it's always been like that, and there is no explicit statements or explicit meanings attached to marriage. So that is something that always fascinates me when it comes to law. So
sorry, can I just quickly add a line to this, just
yeah,
while
yeah.
everyone was speaking? Just
Yeah,
one small,
yeah.
So in India, I think there was this judgment by the Supreme Court that came about saying that, a denial of sex by a spouse could amount to cruelty, right? So in India, it has gone to that extent, right? Where if you deny sex to your spouse, it will actually be considered as cruelty against your partner. And then cruelty is a criminal offense in India under 498A and all of that, right? So that's how far the Indian courts have gone in terms of, ensuring that marriages in India, require sex to consummate. So just that one point I wanted to add. Yeah, thanks.
Thank you for that point. So my next question is circling back to the activism. This is actually within the community, within the queer community, the larger LGBTQIA+ community. So if you've been aware of the queer spaces in queer activism, there have been instances of ace people feeling excluded, alienated, and sometimes even sort of saying like, no, you're not part of this community or something like that. It could be overt, it could be something that is underneath, underhand comments. For instance, the one thing that I've heard is yours is asexuality. How does it even come under orientation? This is coming from a person who is from the community, from the queer community. So is there some sort of like, how do you see that happening in your country? And are there spaces for aces to actually pave way in such a climate, in such a alienating, exclusionary climate within the community, within the queer community? Daniel, could you please go first?
Yeah, I guess the thought that comes to mind here in Taiwan is that the ace community here significantly overlaps with a lot of other communities. And then those different groups all have sort of friendly relationships. So for instance, between Taiwan Asexual Group and By the Way, which is the bisexual group here in Taiwan, with different polyamorous groups as well. So there, and then within the ace community, there's also a sizable proportion of people who identify as non-binary or whose gender identity is not strictly cisgender. So I would say that there are definitely tensions in terms of, how do you navigate a community that is that diverse, where you could have, for instance, cisgendered, ace-identified people who are, propagating various forms of transphobia that then kind of negatively affect other communities, but also trans-identified people within the ace community. So there are definitely those tensions that exist. And I would say, well, I guess more speaking just personally, just as a single person, not representative of anything beyond myself in terms of relationships with other queer communities, I tend to just sort of avoid some of those spaces Not necessarily because I've like gone before and like had negative experiences, but just because you know, I'd rather be in conversation with people that care about the same issues, people that have similar experiences. I'd rather spend my time investing in a space and building a community for people where um, there will definitely be things that people have to communicate and sort of teach and learn from one another in terms of traversing various differences within the ACE community. But it's nice to not have to kind of explain ACE 101 at every single like social interaction that you have. So just again, speaking personally for me, it's not that I've had kind of moments of intense alienation from, say, for instance, like gay spaces in Taipei. It's just that I personally find other kinds of spaces more fulfilling and worthwhile.
Thank you, Daniel. Sippy, what about your experience with this? I mean, is there any or is there none? Anything is good to go.
I think I agree with everything Daniel's just said, right? And then you find yourself like, I've been on forums and I've been on Zoom sessions with queer activists from other spaces where they're very insistent that they know what asexuality is, and that they want to teach me what asexuality is. And so when you find yourself in those spaces, sometimes it gets very frustrating because you keep repeating the same things over and over again, because like you do want to sort of lift this veil of ignorance that people have, right? And so the idea of it being a celibacy, the idea of it being only males and females who might experience asexuality or who identify as ace, and having those definitions written down in reports that are read by thousands of people, there's a lot of like dangerous, that's dangerous territory there. And so it is, and then I also agree with Daniel that there is this interconnectedness and this intersection between the ACE community here and like, say, like the non-binary people and the bi community. And, so in that sense, like and the younger people especially seem to be very sort of open to the things that we do want to tell them, and to having sort of open conversations. And sometimes it's a bit frustrating. The people of my own generation are sometimes sort of limiting themselves to to their already sort of preconceived ideas of like, that we are experts in this field, so we already know these things, and if we don't need you to tell us anything more, even though like they clearly are not. And my lived experiences are, of course, different than what they're thinking of what ace people are, or what aromantic people are, or that there is a spectrum that we identify within. So there are these challenges, obviously, and like Daniel, like sometimes it is very, very tempting, and I do like often avoid these spaces where because it does harm you mentally and like emotionally. So yeah.
Thank you, Sippy. Ala, if you would like to chip in here, how has it been when it comes to LGBTQ plus and the ACE, like the larger queer community, when you interact with them, and how do they even see asexuality within the community, within the queer community?
Most of them accept it, and they didn't know about it. And even some of them, they said, oh, we didn't know that we are asexual too. We are homo and asexual. They didn't know that a person can have more than a name or more than orientation, like he's a trans and asexual, or he's homo and maybe demisexual homo. And then we just make groups and talk to each other, and they discovered themselves. So in the ACE Arabic group, we have a trans, male to female and female to male, and we have lesbians and bi. So we are saying that they are bi-romantic or just bi-asexual. We can't say they are bisexual, asexual. And I think it's a good thing to know ourselves. And even me and my other friends, we are just discovering ourselves, and we are learning, because it's many years of silence about those taboos. It's many years we don't, as I said, we don't have sex education. We don't know what we are. And this separation between the male and female in the schools, in the life, that makes us confusing about our identity and about our orientation. Uh, this is a positive thing to the social media, to make education, make awareness, to make groups and discuss about ourselves and our problems. But the other, from the LGBT community, 100% they would be killed if saying that they are a homosexual. 100% they would be killed. So they are not going in public and say, yes, we are gays, we are lesbians, or we are bisexual. It's just maybe they are telling their friends and the people near to them. Even the trans having a lot of problems. They are just misunderstood. They think the trans are homo. This mixing of the concepts, they do not understand their condition. In religion, there is no problem with the trans. There's a lot of we call it fatwa or fatawi, when a man of religion uh, give an advice, or give a law. There is a lot of fatawi to the trans. It's not forbidden in religion. It's okay if you have a problem, you can change your sex or your gender. But the problem with the homosexual religion, they should be killed. But the problem in the community, the people confusing between them, the trans suffering from harassment, from abuse, uh, um, their families don't like them, don't make them participate in the family gathering or anything. Many of them, they run away from their families, specifically a male trans to female. It's a stigma. You are a man, you can't be a woman. But it's less for the female trans to male. Okay, it's okay, you want to be man. Because this idea of the gender, that the male is a better thing. To be a man, it's better than being a woman. So the female trans to male having much opportunity, more opportunity to face a good opportunity to face the community and their families. But the problem is with the trans male to female. Many of them run away from their families. When they go to any place, they are bothering them, harassment, abusing them. Even in some cases, like what's happened in the last few days in Kuwait country. It's our neighbor country. They arrested a trans male to female. When they arrest her, they consider by the national ID, it's wrote male. So they put her in a jail with a male. That's a huge problem. So, and the mixing between the agender and the gender fluid with the trans or with the homosexuals, it's all just mixing. As I said, we have a lot of years to make awareness about the LGBT And when we are saying LGB, just the word LG, no, you are gays, you are homo. No, 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 we are asexuals. We are just part of this community. They do not accept that we are part of this. Even the asexuals, many of asexuals, they do not consider themselves as a part of LGBT plus community. They think that this community is just for homo and trans, and specifically for homo. Even the rainbow flag, they do not consider it for the whole community, just for the homo community.
Thank you, Ala, for that. It's like we see what, like, the entire stigmatization by the society is also affecting the asexual community and being part of the LGBTQ plus community. So so it's like a reverse alienation that's happening. That is, instead of the community, the queer community alienating, it's like, no, we don't want to be part of it. We will be separate, kind of a thing.
Yes, yes, it's for
yeah.
their safety. Yes.
Yeah. Okay. It's interesting to know that this perspective is this way of alienation is happening. Pragati Singh is coming in with in India. Uh, Experts misinform their audience on what sexuality is all the time, and it's very frustrating and harmful, and takes back all the work that ace community so far has done for years. So this is from Pragati Singh. And Ruth Ann is coming in with, it's always nice when educating someone allows them to discover their identity. It's wonderful that when we speak about our identity, it's somehow allows them to know about it, and also in some ways there is connection happening, and a light bulb, maybe a light bulb goes, oh, even I'm like that. Yes, that's very true, Ruth. Okay, so we have 8 minutes to go, and we'll just wrap up the session. So any final thoughts? Daniel, let's go with you.
Just one kind of thing that's I've been kind of thinking to myself while listening to other panelists sort of sharing is just I've been learning a lot about these different contexts I've previously kind of didn't have much exposure to before. So I just wanted to thank everyone for sharing what they have about the context that they find themselves in.
Sippy, do you want to go next?
Yeah, thank you, everyone for sharing, like Daniel says, the context that you're in, and also it's sort of heartening and disheartening at the same time to see that we are coming from very similar kind of situations legally, socially, right? That there is hopefully a light at the end of the tunnel, as they say. And I guess the thing is to keep pushing on. Yeah.
Pallavi, do you have any final thoughts?
Just thank you to everyone, for sharing. I think it has been a very wholesome discussion, getting to know like what is happening across the globe when it comes to rights and determination of the LGBTI plus community. Like Sippy said it, beautifully. Hopefully there's light at the end of the tunnel. Yeah.
Ala, do you have any final thoughts that you would like to share with us?
And we are, after all, we are just trying to make the world better. Thank you. And thank you for this conference, actually. Really, thank you. I might be arrange something similar for the Arab countries, but we have this those problems, the political, the like ISIS cries, like a lot of things in community, in the politics, we have a lot of problems. So most of the organizations and the people, they are just do not care about asexuality or the sexual orientation. We have a much and a large and huge problem about the killed people, about the people that they took their houses and leave them, or the poverty, a lot of things we have. That's why we are just making a slow progress here. And thank you for this conference, and thank you to let me talk about what I have. Thank for the other participated friends here. Thank you all.
Thank you. Pragati Singh is coming in with Allah. Please get in touch if you need support. She says, personally see to it that Pragati can help you as much as she can. So yes, that's with the comments. And personally, I think I had an insightful conversation with all of you, like ranging from West Asia to South Asia to East Asia, the legal language, the community language. So as a language nut, I always want to understand how the words are used and how it is there's always ambiguity and there's always some sort of culture behind it. So, and also being someone from the social sciences background, I'm always looking at what connects people, how our society is made, how our community is made, and what drives the sociology aspect of it or the law aspect of it. So for me, it has been quite an insightful. I take a lot of lessons from here, and thank you each and every one of the panelists here, and also the participants who have been commenting. Thank you for such wonderful questions and comments. It does make our discussion really, really broad and more varied. Thank you all for joining us today. We do have our next session coming up at 2 o'clock. So at 2 o'clock, it's all about research and presentation of studies that has happened around asexuality or even the queer community. So we have like a few presenters lined up. Few of them are pre-recorded. So please do join us for some conversations on research around asexuality. It's interesting, and I've read some of the abstracts, and it's quite interesting. And we'll have like an insightful, at least some insights into research and asexuality. Please do join in at 2 o'clock. Thank you all.
Sneha, please stop the streaming.